Tonight in California, there's news that the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, has told city officials that large gatherings, such as concerts or sporting events, may not be approved in Los Angeles for at least a year. LA is a city with at least 10 professional sports franchises, not to mention 2 huge college football programs and the Rose Bowl. But in California, they are taking the threat of further spread of the virus seriously. And then there's Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis, under fire for being so slow to act in his state, has decided that professional wrestling is an essential service and therefore exempt from stay-at-home orders.
Obviously, WWE, there's no crowd or anything, so it's a very, very small number of people. So we just kind of look at it on a case-by-case basis. I think people have been starved for content. I mean, we haven't had a lot of new content since the beginning of March. If you think about it, we've never had a period like this in modern American history where you've had such little new content, particularly in the sporting realm. I mean, people are watching, we're watching like reruns from like, the early 2000s.
So you see, defended by saying there is no crowd, which is true, and that people are starved for new sports content, which, again, we get it. I, too, am starved for new sports content. So on Monday night, the WWE did, in fact, broadcast wrestling. There was no crowd, but there was, obviously, it's wrestling, no social distancing among the performers. But also, there's a lot more to this story in terms of who is backing it and how they might have gotten in the governor's ear for this dispensation. Here to explain, Dave Zirin, sports editor of The Nation, who has been covering this story closely and the risks it carries for those involved. So, Dave, walk me through how this exemption came about.
Yeah, this stinks to high heaven, Chris, and it stinks with the words quid pro quo. Let me walk you through what happened. On April 9th, Governor DeSantis declares WWE wrestlers essential workers in the state. That same day on April 9th, Linda McMahon, who is the co-founder of WWE, along with her husband, Vince McMahon, and a former member of Donald Trump's cabinet, she announces that her super PAC is going to be dropping $18.5 million into the state of Florida that same day. Now, why is that important? Because on April 10th, that's the day Vince McMahon decided to resume live programming. Why is that important? Because by showing live programming, he is not in violation of his contract with either Fox Sports or the USA Network. These contracts are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's only allowed 3 non-live shows per year. And yet now he's not in violation of that contract because of this dispensation.
Wait a second. I want to make sure that I have the timing right here. So what you're saying is that the declaration of them as essential workers. Oh, I think maybe we lost. Did we lose his audio? You're saying that the declaration of them as essential workers by DeSantis happens before they announce they're going to actually be doing this.
It's the same day that and it's announced that they're dropping $18.5 million into the state of Florida. Now, on April 10th, that's when Vince McMahon says we're going to continue with live programming, which is critical to his TV deals.
Wow.
On April 13th, this is really bizarre. This is when Governor DeSantis produces the declaration that claims that wrestlers are essential workers. No one saw this declaration on April 9th. It wasn't posted to any websites. It wasn't announced. It was only announced on April 13th when there was all these questions. And these questions were coming up because a member of the WWE's performance team has the coronavirus. And so there's this question that then arises of how are you having these live events? How are you having people not social distancing? How are you letting business go on as usual if somebody has the coronavirus? But it is going on as usual. And then today, April 15th, just to top it off. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, just we should note here that the sort of player safety issue is really, I mean, you've got the crowds and there's a player safety issue. The NBA, what happened in the NBA, of course, was they were going to kind of keep going, and then a major star tests positive before a game. They cancel the game, and then there's no more NBA because you can't have a bunch of people playing basketball against each other, infecting each other with coronavirus. Clearly, there's an analog here.
Absolutely. And then today on April 15th, they announced tons of layoffs from WWE, let a lot of people go, fired a lot of performers, while also announcing that their stock price had reached a good high was on the up and that they had $500 million in cash reserves. And let's remember that the person who's been behind all these machinations, all this quid pro quo, all this money being dropped into the state of Florida, all these machinations by Ron DeSantis, this is Vince McMahon, who was just named that he's going to be on the council that's going to decide when to reopen our economy. He's on that council. Donald Trump called him the great Vince McMahon in yesterday's press conference. And so this person who's putting his own wrestlers at risk because someone on his staff has the coronavirus is going to decide when it's safe for the rest of us.
That is really, really, really wild. And so just to go back to this final point about the contracts, you know, the contracts are an enormous deal for everyone right now, right? So there's all these contracts that are essentially being violated because no one's broadcasting live sports. So this is crucially important for McMahon's bottom line, for him to be able to have events that essentially allow him to uphold his end of the contract and get paid.
Exactly. He could have done bulk tapings, which other wrestling federations are doing, basically tape 6, 7 shows and then have content for the next 7 weeks. But it's specifically that language about live programming, which is worth literally hundreds of millions of dollars with his contracts with USA and Fox. And now he's able to fulfill the aims of those contracts in a way that's very shady. And I got to say, it's hard to imagine a state other than Florida where he could have gotten something like this done. It is a rancid case of quid pro quo. And I think in a country that was operating on all rails, they would be subject to investigations for this behavior.
Wow. Great job sifting through that, Dave Zirin. Thanks so much. Great to hear from you.